Hello, everybody. This is once again nothing but a bunch of pretentious, sleepy, early morning theoretical bullshit. I've been wanting to do this video for a while, and I just can't because like things keep happening, and I can't just sit down and do it. But this is a do-over video. This is a take two, if you will, of the Gospel of John Doe, which was I think the most recent post that I made. And the reason for me making a do-over video is because it was crap. For the record, just a review here. This is how the conversation has gone so far. Darvius, you say Jesus claimed to be God, so he was either Lord, or he was a liar, or he was a lunatic. Now, we know from the Gospels and from what we can read of Jesus that he wasn't a liar or a lunatic, so therefore he must have been Lord. To which I reply, how do you know he even made the claim in the first place? To which you reply, if he didn't make the claim, then that means 12 of the eyewitnesses who saw it happen are lying. And it's more likely that Jesus made the claim than it is that 12 people are lying about it. And as an atheist, it would be better for me to assume that position. The problem with that kind of thinking, with that kind of arguing, is that if you accept the Gospels as some kind of historical, fact-based eyewitness reference, then you don't need the trilemma argument in the first place. You don't need it. All you have to do is skip to the end of the book or the Gospel or whatever it is you're reading where it says that Jesus arose from the grave, and that ought to be enough for you. The trilemma argument is designed... Actually, you know what? I don't know who it's designed to persuade. I don't know if it's for Christians by Christians or if it's for atheists by Christians, but if it's designed to persuade those who, like me, do not accept the historical accuracy of the canonized Gospels that Jesus is Lord, then the argument has to use non-gospel references in order to make its case. Sorry, it just does. Unless you're up for the overwhelming task of proving that the Gospels are historically accurate before you actually make the trilemma argument. But if you succeed in doing so, you won't need to make the trilemma argument in the first place because your audience, me, would already be on the same page as you. So you can see the sort of circular dilemma we've got there. The fact of the matter is, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And Curtis, yours is an extraordinary claim. So before I go on any further, let me just put something out there. Now, making this video, of course, I made myself like some notes and stuff like that, so I don't have to stray off into weirdo fucking tangents like I did in the last video. But let me just say that anything I say in this video, this video is very different from a lot of my other videos, which are based on theory and sort of logic and rationality and what seems reasonable and what makes sense. This is a video about facts. And anything I say is backed up and supported by biblical scholars, textual critics, and historians. I promise you that I will not mention anything or make any claim about history or about what we know of the Gospels that is not at least supported by a majority of biblical scholars and historians. And that said, don't take my word for it. It's all out there. It's all out. This is all information that's available to you and anyone who wants to look it up and just find out. So, that said, let's do an exercise. Let's treat the canonical Gospels as if they are 100% reliable, okay? And we were right there alongside the disciples. Now, if you or I didn't know anything else about Christianity or the Bible, and we know a guy named Jesus who turned water into wine, healed the sick, exorcised demons, walked on water, claimed to be the creator of the universe, got executed for doing so, and rose from the dead a few days later, all in front of our very eyes, well, yes, that would make a very strong case for the fact that either this Jesus guy is in some way divine or we are in some way crazy. And I think even that's a 50-50 probability. But unfortunately, those aren't the circumstances. We weren't there, and we never met this guy Jesus. But let's say, what if some of our best friends, let's say 12 reliable members of our posse come to us and they say that they had in fact witnessed this firsthand. Would you believe them? Maybe you would, maybe you wouldn't. I don't know. I would ask for more evidence. I still would not be satisfied. Too extraordinary of a claim, not extraordinary enough evidence. It doesn't matter because those aren't the circumstances either. There's only 4 Gospels in the Bible: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, not 12. So the 12 liars defense you gave doesn't really work because we don't have 12 people making this claim. We've never met these 12 people. We've never talked to eyewitnesses. We have 4 of these books that are essentially claiming that 12 people would make this claim. And even then, only 2 of the 4 people to whom these Gospels are attributed would have even been eyewitnesses. So instead, going back to our little scenario here, let's just say that 4 of our friends came up to us and simply told us that there were 12 eyewitnesses that we unfortunately don't ever get to meet. Well, that's not really an eyewitness account anymore, is it? But that's the least of our problems. The canonical Gospels, they weren't written during Jesus' ministry. The earliest one of them was written 30 years later. So let's throw in a twist. Let's say that our 4 friends are just now telling us about this Jesus guy, but it would have happened over 30 years ago, leaving us to rely on, what? Nothing but the frail recollection of our friends to preserve every detail of an entire life and ministry that occurred 3 decades prior. Now, I don't know about you. I can't remember a line from a movie I saw yesterday, but I guess that's why it's called faith. Still, we're far from done. We know that Mark was the first of the 4 Gospels to be written, and that was between 60 and 70 AD about. We also know that our earliest and best manuscripts of Mark end with the discovery of the empty tomb, meaning those last 12 verses describing the resurrection and the ascension, those were all added later. They weren't originally in Mark. And Matthew and Luke were written after that, sometime between 70 and 100 AD, and they were both based off of and borrowed extensively from Mark, and presumably another document that we don't have that scholars call Q. Although there is a camp of scholars who believe that Matthew was based off of Mark, and then Luke was based off of Matthew, thus Luke borrowing from both Matthew and Mark, but that's kind of I think that's more of a minority viewpoint. Gospel of John was written the latest, no earlier than 90 AD, and is widely accepted as having been written by several authors over a long stretch of time. John is also the gospel that pretty much all scholars reject as having any kind of historical accuracy or validity whatsoever. Another fun fact about John, and I say this because you made it a point in your video of arguing against the reliability of Gnostic texts, is that even though it's not considered a Gnostic piece by you or other Christians, it was by the Gnostics. In fact, a lot of the times that we found early manuscripts of John, it was compiled along with and alongside other Gnostic Gospels and Gnostic texts. And if you open John up, it has a lot of pro-Gnostic themes in there. You just have to look for them. It starts off right with the first verse, saying that Jesus was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. That's very Gnostic-ish. Having said all of that, one more thing about John. John is the only gospel of the 4 canonized gospels in which Jesus actually makes the claim in question that he's God. Just something to think about. So, back to our scenario. Given all of that, given what we've just learned today about the Gospels, let's switch our scenario around a little bit because we have some editing to do now. Let's say that only one of our 4 friends actually even knows somebody who was an eyewitness, and the other 3 of our friends are just borrowing and retelling that same story that they heard from our first friend, and possibly borrowing from other friends of theirs who we've actually never met. Now, obviously, the scenario has changed greatly. Instead of hearing 4 different eyewitness perspectives of the same event, which sadly is what most uneducated Christians think that's what they're supposed to be reading in the Bible, we're hearing 1 non-eyewitness account and then 3 distorted and embellished versions of that same account by our other friends. Let me just take a break here. I'm going to have to make another video just to go on. We're far from done. But at this point, do you think that still, yes, absolutely, hearing the evidence that you've heard so far, you believe Jesus did and said these things that we're hearing about? Just something to think about. I'll get back to you in part 2. Thank you so much for your patience.